Doing a book signing in Northern Kentucky is a really great moment in my life. There are two reasons. One is I have people here from every aspect of my life, from the day I was born through my high school, grade school, college, adulthood. There's somebody represented from every part. But more importantly, the book Son of a Gambler, the theme is based in Northern Kentucky, primarily my father's occupation as a professional gambler, and it was based in the Newport area of Northern Kentucky. The time period is very interesting in that it was a transitional period within the history of the Northern Kentucky area. Northern Kentucky was known as Sin City, as a major gangster run mob-oriented casino operations. It's very similar to Las Vegas in my early youth. I was When I was a very young child, I went to places like Beverly Hills, the Lookout House, Glenn Smith, which is now called the Syndicate, and other places like that, which are essentially casinos, and that's how the area operated. And during the area where my father really kind of came into play as a professional gambler, a bookmaker, a variety of other things. With that time after the mafia was run out of Northern Kentucky in the mid 1960s up to the mid 1970s. And so a lot of interesting things that play into the theme of this book. And so the book has an interesting genesis. I'd been a writer and a columnist for a couple different periods of my life, and I did it right out of college for 3 years. I wrote for the Lexington Herald Leader, and then I stopped for roughly 20 years, and it picked back up and become a syndicated columnist. My mother died in April 2006, and somewhere out of the conversations right after Mom's death, people ask if you ever done anything that you wanted to do but never got around to. And I thought, well, one thing I'd always wanted to do was write a book, and I never had. And so I immediately came out and wrote my first book, which was The Unbridled World of Ernie Fletcher. Ernie Fletcher was the governor of Kentucky at that time. The day that the Fletcher book was scheduled to release, it's the same day my sister fell down a flight of steps and accidentally died. And made me very reflective, and also brought me back to the Northern Kentucky, greater Cincinnati area, which all played in to how the second book came about. It was all basically my point of life, where was looking back on a very unique childhood and a very unique person in my father, and all this played in to the Son of the Gambler theme, the format in the book. And my dad, it was very interesting in that to explain to outside people sometimes that gambling was so prevalent and so wide open during that time period, where it really wasn't wide open. At the time, Las Vegas was the only, and Nevada was the only place that had legalized gambling. And to have that sort of illegal gambling essentially on every street corner and within every aspect of society. My father was an extremely intelligent man, but he had to drop out of school in the ninth grade, and he always said that if I had lived in Pennsylvania, I'd been a steel worker. If I'd lived in West Virginia, I'd been a coal miner. I lived in Northern Kentucky, and gambling was the industry in town, so that's what I went into. And he was extremely successful at that, and taught quite a lot of lessons about life. One of the most streetwise individuals I think I've ever come across, and that comes through the book. The book touches on many other subjects in the financial world, but where it's really caught on is, and where my world and my father's world meets, is in the world of lottery winners. In the book, I talk quite a bit about lottery winners. I give advice on what to do if you happen to win the lottery, and how not to blow a lump sum, which 90% of people who win a lottery are going to blow through a lump sum in 5 years or less. So I give a lot of advice on how to do it, and some interesting stories about people who weren't successful in handling their money. The nature of this book being a little bit harder for the audience to quite get their arms around, and also with the very long title, it just took a while for this one to take off, and started off kind of slowly, and then in September of 2008, the book really was not doing well. It's just kind of sitting on the bookshelves. But I met a woman, a wonderful woman named Ariana Huffington, and I met her in 2006, met her again in 2008, and started writing a column for the Huffington Post. Right at the time the economic crisis took place, I became part of their business page. And one of the things Huffington does is they continuously advertise my book. And I found that people started buying the book, and the book took off in sales again just because I had access to this worldwide audience on Huffington Post that I hadn't had previously. They became interested in anything that I was writing, and this was one of it. And then the book just stayed out there and stayed out there. And I continued to make a lot of appearances, particularly in the Cincinnati area. WLW Radio has had me on numerous times, and also done things all over the world, really. I've been on the Canadian Broadcasting Network, I've been on radio, television, just all over the place. But what really made this book come back to life was unfortunately was because of the death of a man in Florida named Abraham Shakespeare. Abraham Shakespeare was a man in Florida who won the lottery and was almost a prototype of somebody who was taken advantage of by the people around him. He didn't follow a lot of the rules that I often talk about for lottery winners. I tell them to keep it confidential, and he had a news conference. I tell people to take the money over the 20 years or 30-year period of time, and he took it all in a lump sum. I tell people to find a competent and well-trained financial advisors. If you have 100 million, you need to find an advisor who's worked with 150 million. Abraham Shakespeare didn't do that, and apparently the woman who was allegedly his advisor has been charged with his murder. He was murdered. He was found under a slab of concrete at the house of the boyfriend of the woman who's now charged with this crime. And when his death came about, and because he had not taken all these precautions, I became frequently quoted all around in almost every newspaper in the United States and various media outlets, and especially in the Orlando and Tampa area where Shakespeare lived. And all of a sudden, the book shot up to again on the Amazon charts. It suddenly became a big seller. It became a bigger seller in 2010 than it was in 2008 when it was released. So we made a decision to do a book tour, and it's been a highly successful book tour, and Northern Kentucky is the second last stop in this tour, and it's a very great moment to come back to a place where my history is, and my family's history is, and where all the book really the genesis of the book came from. When I was growing up, my dad would always say that, always encouraged me to be a writer. From the time I was little, he said writing was my great gift, and that was the thing that I should go into. And he always would say, someday when you get older, you ought to write a book about me, and it'll be a bestseller. Well, it took a long time to put it together, but my father was absolutely right.